He had $11 left in the world. She had nothing at all. What he didn't know would change both their lives forever. He split his last meal 3 ways. She hadn't eaten a real meal in days, but this stranger was hiding a secret worth billions. She wasn't homeless. She was the billionaire CEO of a global empire, testing the world to find one honest man. The woman he fed with his last dollar just walked back into his life as someone he never expected. One shared meal, one honest heart. It didn't just change his life, it rebuilt an entire town.
If you have ever given away your last dollar to help a stranger, you already know how this story ends, but you have no idea how it begins. Before we go any further, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happened between a broke single father and a woman he thought was homeless is about to remind you why kindness is never wasted. Stay until the end. The twist will stay with you long after this video is over. Ethan Cole was 37 years old, and by every measure that mattered on paper, he was failing. He stood just over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered from a decade of wrenching engines at Reyes Auto Repair, with short dark brown hair that had started going gray at the temples, and a permanent 5-0 clock shadow he never had time to shave clean. His hazel eyes carried the particular exhaustion of a man who had not slept a full night in 3 weeks. Not since his wife, Maria, had died in a car accident that still haunted every quiet moment he allowed himself to think about it. He raised his daughter Lily, alone in a 2-bedroom rental on the edge of town, and on the last Friday of that October, he had exactly $11.40 to his name, until his next paycheck, which was 5 days away. The garage where Ethan worked had cut his hours the month before. His boss, Tom Reyes, a stocky man in his 50s, with kind eyes and a guilty conscience, had pulled Ethan aside and told him business was slow, that he hated doing this to a man with a kid. But the shop simply could not afford full-time wages for everyone anymore. Ethan did not blame him. He blamed the timing, rent due in 6 days, Lily's school field trip fee due in 3, and a refrigerator that had started making a grinding noise that meant it was dying, just like everything else in his life seemed to be doing lately. That evening, Ethan picked Lily up from Mrs. Grower. Dorothy was 71, a widow who lived 2 doors down and had appointed herself Lily Square, Thac's honorary grandmother, the week after Maria's funeral, refusing every dollar Ethan tried to pay her for watching his daughter after school. Lily was 7, with her mother's dark curls and an unshakable, almost unnerving optimism that Ethan sometimes did not understand, given everything they had lost. She ran to him at the door, backpack bouncing, and asked if they could get pizza, because Emma from her class had pizza for dinner every Friday, and it wasn't to note. His next day, Ethan crouched down, brushed a curl out of her face, and told her they were going to make their own pizza at home instead, which would be even better because they could put anything they wanted on it. It was a lie born of necessity. He had a box of crackers, half a jar of peanut butter, 2 eggs, and $11 for gas to get to work for the rest of the week. But Lily grinned and said okay, and Ethan felt the particular ache of a father who has learned to turn scarcity into a gain so his child never has to feel it as loss. On the drive home, they passed the small public park near Maple Street, the kind of place with a rusted swing set and a single flickering lamppost, where the town's homeless population sometimes gathered because a local church left out donated blankets on example. Cold nights. Ethan almost did not stop. He had $11, a hungry daughter, and no room in his life for anyone else's hardship. But then he saw her. She was sitting alone on a bench at the edge of the park, wrapped in a thin gray coat that did nothing against the October chill, her knees pulled up to her chest. Her hair, long, dark, wavy, was pulled back messily, and even in the fading light, there was something striking about her face. High cheekbones and deep green eyes that seemed entirely out of place with the rest of her ragged appearance. She could not have been older than mid-30s. She was not asking for anything. She was not holding a sign. She was simply sitting very still, the way people sit when they have run out of places to go. Ethan told Lily to wait 1 minute, and he walked over. He asked the woman if she was okay. She looked up at him, startled that anyone had spoken to her at all, and said she was fine, in a voice that did not match the rest of her. Measured, careful, the voice of someone used to controlling every word that left her mouth. Her name, she said, was Rachel. Ethan did not think to question it. He thought about his $11. He thought about the crackers and peanut butter waiting at home. And then he did the thing that would change everything. He asked Rachel if she had eaten today. When she hesitated too long before answering, he already knew. 20 minutes later, the three of them sat inside a small diner called the Yellow Spoon, the only place in town where $11 could still buy 3 people something warm. Ethan ordered a single plate, a grilled cheese and a bowl of tomato soup, and split it 3 ways, between himself, Lily, and Rachel, insisting he wasn't, well, hungry. Even as his stomach twisted with hunger, he had gotten disturbingly good at ignoring. Lily, without being told, pushed half of her small portion of fries toward Rachel, because that was simply the kind of child Maria had raised her to be, even from beyond. Rachel ate slowly, like someone who had forgotten how food was supposed to taste, and watched this father and daughter with an expression Ethan could not quite place, something between disbelief and something breaking open. She asked him why he was doing this, when he clearly had so little himself. Ethan shrugged and said the little he had went further shared than it did alone, and that his late wife used to say the same thing. And some habits you keep, because letting go of them would mean letting go of her too. What Ethan did not know, what no one in that diner could have guessed, was that the woman across, wrapped in a donated coat, eating a grilled cheese sandwich like it was the finest meal she had ever tasted, was Victoria Hale, the 34-year-old CEO of Hale Industries, a logistics and manufacturing empire worth $11 billion. 6 days earlier, Victoria had walked out of a board meeting in New York, where her own uncle, Gerald Whitfield, had proposed a hostile restructuring that would gut the company's manufacturing division and lay off nearly 4,000 workers in towns, exactly like this. 1. All in the name of quarterly margins. Victoria had refused to sign it. Gerald had told her, in front of the entire board, that she had gone soft, that she had lost touch with what it actually took to run a company, that she was her father's daughter in name only. Something in Victoria had cracked that day. She had spent 11 years building Hale Industries into what it was, ever since her father died and left it to her at 23, and somewhere in the boardrooms and private jets and quarterly earnings calls, she had genuinely begun to wonder if Gerald was right, if she had lost some essential understanding of the people whose lives her decisions actually touched. So she had done something no one on her staff knew about. She disappeared for 2 weeks. She left her phone, her assistant, her driver, everything, and told only one person, her longtime executive assistant, Grace Nakamura, where she was going and why. To live as an ordinary, struggling stranger in a small town, with nothing but the clothes on her back. To remember, really remember, what it meant to need help and to receive it, or not. She had not expected kindness. Not real kindness. Not from a man who so clearly had almost nothing to give. That was what broke her, sitting in that booth at the Yellow Spoon. Not the food, but the fact that Ethan Cole had looked at a stranger with nothing and decided she was still worth feeding. Over the following 2 weeks, Victoria, still Rachel to Ethan, found reasons to be near him. She took a job for cash washing dishes at the Yellow Spoon, genuinely working the shifts, genuinely aching by the end of each one, learning in her body what she had only ever known in spreadsheets. Ethan, without quite meaning to, began looking for her. He brought her coffee some mornings before his shift. Lily adored her instantly. In the uncomplicated way children adore anyone who kneels down to actually listen to them, and began drawing her pictures, crayon sons and stick figure families that always, without fail, included Rachel standing beside Ethan and Lily, like she already belonged there. Ethan told her things he had not told anyone. About Maria, about the guilt he carried for not being in the car that night, about the fear that he was failing Lily by working himself into the ground and still never having enough. Victoria listened the way almost no one had ever listened to her, not for what she could offer him, not for what he could offer her, but simply because his pain mattered on its own terms. She found herself, for the first time in over a decade, wanting to protect something that had nothing to do with market share. But 2 weeks is not forever, and the world Victoria had left behind was catching up. Gerald Whitfield had used her absence to accelerate his plan. He told the board Victoria had suffered a breakdown, that she was unfit to lead, and called an emergency vote to install himself as interim CEO, a vote scheduled for the following Monday. Grace, frantic, finally tracked Victoria down through the one-burner phone she'd insisted her boss keep, and told her everything. If Victoria did not return to New York by Sunday night, the company her father had built, the jobs of thousands of people in towns just like this one, would be gone within the year, carved up and sold for parts. Victoria had one day left as Rachel. She chose to spend part of it telling Ethan the truth. She found him at the garage on a Saturday afternoon, Lily coloring in the corner on an overturned crate, and she told him everything. Her real name, her company, the disguise, the reason she had come to this town in the first place. She watched his face cycle through disbelief, then something closer to hurt, the particular hurt of a man who had let himself be truly seen by someone who had not, in turn, been honest about who she was. He asked her, quietly, if any of it had been real. The conversations, the late nights at the diner, the way she looked at Lily like she mattered. Victoria told him it was the most real thing she had experienced in 11 years, and that the only lie had ever been her name. Ethan did not know what to do with that. He needed time, he told her, and Victoria, who had spent her whole career deciding things, instantly and unilaterally, for once in her life did not push. She told him where she was going and why, kissed Lily's forehead, and left for New York that same night, uncertain whether she would ever see either of them again. That same week, Ethan's estranged older brother, Marcus, resurfaced. The two had not spoken in nearly 4 years, not since a bitter argument over their late father's small garage that Marcus had sold out from under Ethan for quick cash right after Maria's funeral, a decision Ethan had never forgiven. Marcus showed up at Reyes Auto Repair unannounced, a little grayer, a little humbler, and told Ethan he had heard through a cousin that things were tight and that he wanted to help, if Ethan would let him. Ethan almost turned him away out of old habit and older pride. But Rachel's absence had left something raw and open in him, a reminder of how much energy it took to carry resentment alone, and for Lily's sake, more than his own. He let Marcus back into their lives, one cautious dinner at a time. It was not forgiveness yet. It was the beginning of it. And in a story already full of second chances, it mattered more than Ethan expected. Meanwhile, in New York, Grace Nakamura worked around the clock to shore up support before Monday's vote, calling board members Victoria had personally recruited over the years, reminding them what the company stood for before Gerald's Mina's spreadsheets started doing the talking. Gerald, sensing his advantage slipping, sent a private investigator to the small town to dig up anything that could discredit Victoria's 2-week disappearance, evidence of instability, an affair, anything the press could seize on. The investigator found Dorothy Whitman instead, who, when a stranger with expensive shoes, started asking pointed questions about the woman who used to wash dishes at the Yellow Spoon, simply told him this was a friendly town that did not appreciate people prying into good people's kindness, and sent him on his way with nothing but a description of a devoted single father and a shy new friend who was, in Dorothy's words, clearly good for him. It was not much, but it was enough to make Gerald's team hesitate, wary of a story that might humanize Victoria rather than damage her. Ethan spent that same weekend in a private turmoil of his own, unsure whether to reach out. Lily, with the plain-spoken wisdom 7-year-olds sometimes carry, told her father over seconds, cereal, one morning, that Rachel had not lied about the things that mattered. She had still helped, wash dishes, still listened to his stories, still liked the same milkshake flavor as Lily did, and that maybe a person's name was not actually the most important true thing about them. Ethan did not have an answer for that, except to hold his daughter a little tighter and admit, quietly, that she might be right. The board meeting on Monday was brutal. Gerald had the votes lined up on paper, painted Victoria's 2-week disappearance as proof of instability, and reminded the room, twice, that sentiment did not pay shareholders. He had brought consultants with slides, projecting margin improvements. Charts that turned 4,000 livelihoods into a single downward sloping line, meant to look inevitable. For a moment, watching the room nod along, Victoria felt the old fear rise in her chest. The fear that Gerald had been right all along. That the version of her who had spent 2 weeks scrubbing dishes and eating grilled cheese sandwiches was a fantasy she could not afford to bring back into this room. Then she thought of Ethan, of the exact way he had split $11 3 ways without a second thought, and the fear went quiet. Victoria stood before the board, still faintly bearing the calluses of 2 weeks' washing. Dishes she had not bothered to have manicured away. And instead of a polished defense, she told them the truth. She told them about a mechanic in a town they had never heard of, who fed a stranger with the last of tomb. What he had, about a 7-year-old girl who gave away her fries without being asked. About thousands of employees in towns, exactly like that one, who were not line items, but the last. Best version of what her father had actually built this company to protect. She proposed, instead of Gerald's restructuring, a new manufacturing investment plan that would create jobs, not cut them, starting with a new regional plant, and she named the town where Ethan lived as the pilot site, not as a gesture toward one man, but because she had walked its streets and knew, better than any spreadsheet could tell her, exactly what that town needed. The vote was close, but it was hers. Gerald resigned from the board within the month, rather than face the shareholders he had misled. Ethan did not learn about any of this from Victoria. He learned about it from the local news 3 weeks later, when Hale Industries announced a $400 million manufacturing investment in the town, projected to bring over 2,000 jobs within 18 months. Construction, logistics, skilled trades, exactly the kind of work that could pull a town like his back from the edge it had been standing on for a decade. Reyes Auto Repair, as it turned out, was contracted as the exclusive maintenance provider for the entire new fleet of company vehicles. And Tom Reyes called Ethan into the office that same week, not to cut his hours, but to make him shift supervisor. Victoria came back to town herself for the groundbreaking ceremony, not as Rachel, but fully as herself, tailored charcoal suit, the quiet, unmistakable authority of a woman who ran a global company, cameras and local officials trailing her every step. Ethan almost did not recognize her at first, not because her face had changed, but because he had never seen the version of her that the rest of the world knew. She found him at the edge of the crowd afterward, Lily's hand in his, and she did not talk about the company, or the investment, or any of it. She asked him, simply, if he had thought about what she told him at the garage. Ethan told her he had thought about nothing else for 3 weeks. He told her that the woman who mattered to him had never been a CEO or a stranger named Rachel. She had been the person who ate his last grilled cheese sandwich like it was worth something, who listened to him grieve without flinching, who let his daughter believe, for 2 weeks, that the world still had good, uncomplicated people in it. He said he did not care what she was worth on paper. Victoria, for the first time since she had walked out of that board meeting weeks earlier, let herself cry in front of someone else, and told him that was the first time in her adult life anyone had made that distinction out loud. They did not rush into anything false or fast. Victoria split her time between New York and the town for the better part of a year, overseeing the new plant, and slowly, unmistakably, building a life alongside Ethan and Lily that had nothing to do with press releases. She learned to sit through Lily's school recitals instead of board calls, and Ethan learned, slowly, to let someone else carry part of the weight he had spent 3 years carrying alone. Marcus became a regular at Sunday dinners, and even Tom Reyes, delighted at the shop's sudden good fortune, admitted he had never seen Ethan laugh so easily as he did that year. Lily, delighted beyond words, informed her entire second-grade class that her almost stepmother was a superhero in disguise, which was, all things considered, not far from the truth. A year to the day after that first meal at the Yellow Spoon, Ethan and Victoria returned to the same booth, the same waitress even, older now and startled to realize who her regular dishwasher customer had actually been all along. They ordered the same grilled cheese and tomato soup, split 3 ways, because Lily insisted on the tradition, and because some habits, Ethan had learned, you keep not because you have to, but because they remind you of exactly who you want to keep being. The lesson of Ethan and Victoria's story was never really about billionaires or disguises. It was about the $11 a struggling father chose to share instead of hoard. About a kindness given with no expectation of return, offered to a stranger who, as far as he knew, had absolutely nothing to give back. Ethan never got rich because he fed a CEO. He got everything that mattered because he was the kind of man who would have fed a stranger, regardless of who she turned out to be. That is the part of this story worth remembering long after the credits roll. You rarely know, in the moment you choose to be kind, exactly what that kindness will become. You simply choose it because it is who you are, and you let the rest of the world catch up to you eventually. If this story moved you even a little, make sure you are subscribed, because there are more stories just like this one still to come. Drop a comment and let us know which moment hit you hardest. Was it the grilled cheese sandwich, the fries Lily gave away, or the truth Victoria finally told at the garage? We read every single one. Thank you for watching until the very end, and we will see you in the next story.